Today is International Micro, Small and Medium-Sized Business Day. And according to the UN, this is a day to recognize their contributions to local and global economy. Now, while there's no doubt about the support that SMEs give, the question is, are they getting the funding and support that they deserve? Today, we spoke to Diana Aluga from the African Guarantee Fund to figure out what can be done and how they're doing their part.
The moment we have signed partnerships with more than 100 financial institutions across the continent. And what happens is this is a deal or an agreement that happens between us and a bank or a lending institution. And so once we sign the agreement, then they use that facility to cover their risks that normally they would be incurring when they're lending to SMEs. So the process basically is us as African Guarantee Fund partnering with a financial institution that is lending to SMEs, and then so they use the facility that we give them to be able to give more loans to small and medium-sized enterprises.
Right, so could you give us an example of some guarantees that you've made in the past?
Well, we have quite a number of financial institutions that we have partnered with. Just to name a few, we've partnered with EcoBank, we've partnered with Commercial Bank of Africa, we've partnered with, well, in Kenya, there's more than 10 financial institutions that we've partnered with. So ideally, just to cover all of it, is we have like more than 100 PFIs.
Right. So, you know, we've seen some of the challenges that SMEs have faced. And, you know, it's not just funding. There are some other issues that hinder the growth of SMEs, such as, you know, lack of infrastructure. Sometimes there's lack of skills in the environment. How else can we support SMEs' growth?
Okay, so yes, I agree with you that the issue SMEs are facing is beyond just financing. If anything, the access to finance comes up because of other gaps that are existing currently facing SMEs. So the ones that I can list out right now would be first, the legal environment that we have in the continent does not really make it easy for SMEs to provide the required documents or collateral that are required to be able to get financing. There is the skills gap, and here it affects both the financial institutions and the small and medium-sized enterprises, where the lenders themselves do not have enough information on how to craft products that are specifically intended for SMEs. And for the SMEs, the skills that they lack is how do they present themselves to position themselves in a way that they can access proper financing and more financing, so to speak. The other issue that there is the resource gap. You'll find that financial institutions right now in Africa mostly are on short-term resources. When you look at SMEs, what they need is long-term resources. So that's another gap that is there. And finally, there's the gap of collateral, because most of the time when an SME is seeking financing, they'll be asked for, you know, a lot of collateral, and they do not have this. So these are the gaps that, if you look at it now comprehensively, it now comes up to the larger gap of access to finance.
Right. So we've seen that in Kenya, there's over 40%, almost 50% of SMEs that are failing and dying within the first year of operating. Is there any change that you see coming in the near future for this number, and how are you helping to change it?
Well, certainly there is change. And if I can just say that what we have done so far is an indication that a lot is yet to come in the future. I mean, if you're looking at the impact that the guarantees that we have given has had, not only for Kenyan SMEs, but you will notice our guarantees have assisted more than 20,000 SMEs across Africa. So what we're looking to do as an institution for SMEs in future is, one, we're looking to increase our funds, our capital as an institution, because through that, then we are able to leverage more to financial institutions. So on our side, we're mobilizing more resources, and we want to use the resources that we're mobilizing to be able to leverage and unlock more financing for SMEs. So what we intend to do over the next years is to be able to support at least 10,000 SMEs every year in the continent. And through this, now the SMEs can be able to create even more jobs when we look at it annually. So yes, there is hope for SMEs. More institutions are coming up, and it's a very large scope. It's not something that can only be done by one institution. And we keep saying that we're not in this SME space in competition with anyone, because the gap is so huge. At the moment, we're looking at more than $150 billion of the financing gap. And what we're looking to do is to reduce this gap at least by 1%. This tells you that there's another 99% to be reduced. So there is more to be done. And what has been done so far by us, for instance, is commendable, having supported more than 20,000 African SMEs, and we intend to do more.
There's no doubt that getting into the SME space is a smart one, but what made AGF decide to get into that space initially? Okay,
so the story actually starts from around 2011. That is when we were established, and it came up as a resolution of the African Union, because they noticed that there's a problem. SMEs are not accessing financing, and there was lack of a Pan-African institution that can address this issue across the continent. So it was at this point that the Commission agreed to establish a Pan-African Guarantee Fund that will be able to work with institutions, financial institutions across the continent to support SMEs. So that is the origin. And at the founding, we had only three founding shareholders. That was the African Development Bank, the Danish government through its Danida arm, and the Spanish government also through ACID. So these were the three founding shareholders that we had at the moment. And 7 years down the line, we now have 7 shareholders, having been joined by other governments. There's a French government, we have the German government through KfW, Nordic Development Fund. So that has been the story for us, and it's a story of growth, and we still, as I said, look to do more for SMEs in Africa.
Right. Are you following up with some of the SMEs that have benefited from the funds?
Well, we are very, very keen on impacts, and that is why even as an institution, we have an arm that is dedicated to monitoring and evaluating the impacts that we have. So yes, we do follow up majorly through the financial institutions, because remember, the agreement that we have as an organization is with the financial institution. So we monitor on the growth, on how their SME portfolio has grown as a lender, and we're able to track and tell you this is the number that has been impacted. That is why we can report, such impacts as 20,000 SMEs. So yes, we do that. We follow up through the financial institutions.